what happened, the market, and this is really important to understand, in the last couple of years, the stock market is it's always been a combination of a casino and when I talk about Wall Street, I'm talking about the whole capital formation market, but and trading market, et cetera. But the market has been extraordinary. Sometimes it's quite investment oriented, kind of like it always you read about in the books and everything, what capital markets are supposed to do, and you study it in school and all that. And other times it's almost totally a casino, and it's a gambling parlor. And that existed to an extraordinary degree in the last couple of years, encouraged by Wall Street, because the money is in turning over stocks. I mean, people say how wonderful you've done if you bought Berkshire in 1965 or something and held it. But your broker would have starved to death. Wall Street makes money on one way or another, catching the crumbs that fall off a table of capitalism and an incredible economy that nobody could have ever dreamed of a couple hundred years ago. But that they don't make money unless people do things and that they get a piece of them. And they make a lot more money when people are gambling than when they're investing. I mean, it's much better to have somebody that's going to trade 20 times a day and get all excited about it, just like pulling the handle on a slot machine. That's who you may not say that you want that person. You'd like the other kind of person too, maybe, but that's where you make the money.
Mike Macy from Indianapolis. I have really enjoyed reading your annual letters and your annual report, and I've gone back and read all the older ones too. They're terrific. I have also enjoyed reading the 2 books by Peter Lynch. And I see a lot of commonalities between the two of you, the way you think and your philosophy, etc. I'd certainly appreciate it if you'd make a few comments on what you think of Peter Lynch, the things he says in his 2 books, and the advice that he gives to investors. Thank you.
I know Peter. I don't know him well, but we played bridge together in Omaha, as a matter of fact. And I like him personally, and obviously he has an outstanding record. And he has written those 2 books which have been bestsellers about his investment philosophy. I don't really have anything. I'm not going to embroider on his. There's certainly a fair amount of overlap. There's some difference. Peter obviously likes to diversify a lot more than I do.
I walked into this casino or a Flamingo. It's kind of a motel-like arrangement. And I was 21 and my bride was 19. And I looked around the room and there were all of these people, and they were better dressed then. It was a more dignified group than perhaps currently. But they'd flown thousands of miles in some cases, in planes that weren't as fast as the current ones and were more expensive probably on a per mile basis adjusted. And they'd gone to great lengths to come out to do something that was mathematically unintelligent, and they knew it was unintelligent. And I mean, they couldn't do it fast enough in terms of rolling the dice, and trying to determine whether they were hot or whatever they may be. And I looked around at that group. Everybody there knew that they were doing something that was mathematically dumb, and they'd come thousands of miles to do it. And they were, and I said to my wife, I said, I'm going to get rich. I mean, how can you miss?
I think for most managements, if the only thing they're in is the reinsurance business, they may like it better when prices make sense, but I think they will be prone to do quite a bit of business when prices don't make sense as well, because there's no alternative except to give the money back to the owners, and that is not something that most managements do somersaults over.
Well, I think we've made more because of the crazy gambling. I think it's made it easier for us, net, over the decades we've been operating.
Well, I mean, we've depended on it.
Yes.
I mean, we depend on mispriced businesses through a mechanism where we're not responsible for the mispricing of them. And overall, we learned something a long time ago that doesn't take a high IQ, doesn't take anything, just takes the right attitude.
I think Berkshire is basically a very old-fashioned kind of a place, and it tries to exert discipline to stay old-fashioned. And I don't mean old-fashioned stupid. I mean, the eternal verities, so to speak. Basic mathematics, basic horse sense, basic fear, basic discriminations regarding human nature, all very old-fashioned. And if you just do that with a certain amount of discipline, I think it's likely to work out quite well.
President Kennedy said, well, pay any price, climb any hill, whatever it may be, to find businesses, but we actually prefer it when they fall into our lap.
Berkshire is incredibly decentralized in terms of power and decisions resting in the operating divisions. In terms of the marketable securities, it's incredibly centralized. And so far, we have not had any big penalty from not being able to do the things that we did when we were young. Eventually, we will reach the penalty.
Have you got any explanation for it, Charlie?
Well, I have another thing that interests me in the presidency. We get all these suggestions from index funds, a letter saying the chairman and the president of the chief executive officer are the same person, and that they have some professor somewhere that thinks that American business would work better if it had a separate, if Warren could split them in two and have each half work. And to me, it's the most ridiculous criticism I've ever heard. Odysseus would come back from winning the battle in Troy and so forth, and some guy was saying, I don't like the way you were holding your spear when you won that battle. There's some guy that's never run any business and doesn't know anything. I don't think too much of this activity.
Well, let's see. I forget how many bridges we have, but some years ago, we were spending $3 or $4 billion a year on capital expenditures. And I said, Matt wrote, I said, this is a lot of money to spend, keeping up a railroad. And then he said, well, we're going to have to do that and more and so on. And I said, I can handle this, but I'm not sure Charlie can. I mean, I have to explain these numbers to him. So the next bridge they built, they called the Charles T. Munger Bridge. So you can actually go see. Our railroad has the Charles T. Munger Bridge because Charlie kind of was asking similar questions 10 years ago. The auto insurance business ought to be studied in business school because it essentially refutes so many of the things they're presently teaching. So that's my suggestion today to business schools. Ajit is responsible for adding more value to Berkshire than the total net worth of Progressive is. That's not to knock Progressive. I'm just saying one guy.